Hey, thanks for being a part of the conversation. This is Play It Forward. Real people with real stories. The struggle to play it forward. Episode number 614 is with Dr. Hannah Durkin, author of the book Survivors of the Clotilda.
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Well, I'm very proud of you. I'm so proud of you for bringing a story that has been shoved to the side for way too long. So many people do not know about this, but through you, we will learn.
Well, it's just been a pleasure to do this project. So I certainly hope that.
How did you get the information? Because, I mean, is it readily available or did you have to do some serious digging?
Yeah, so I really benefited from the digitization of materials. So census data, genealogical data is really quite easy to access. I mean, often it's behind a subscription service, but you can get to it online. And also the digitization of newspapers. I mean, it's quite a laborious process. So if you're looking to try and find someone who's African-born, you might. I had to do lots of keyword searches to try and find information, try and find people living in Alabama who are African-born, who might have had, just had a brief mention in the newspaper. So the information is incredibly fragmentary. But once you start to piece it together, it's incredibly revealing.
One of the things that is so special about this book are the photographs. The photographs, along with the storylines. You're making this sound like that it's something that is happening in our present place of now, because now we can see a face. Now we can, connect the stories together. And I love the way that your editor or even you bridge this together.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's nothing like a photographer, for actually bringing someone to life as a person, or even film footage. So there is film footage of two of the Clotilda survivors, easy accessible online. Obviously, they're not in my book because you can't include a moving image. But there is film footage of Doshi and Kazula or Kudjo Lewis, who were the second and third longest lived Clotilda survivors.
Now, being down here in the South, which, the South was affected by slavery, and the thing is that we go to the historic places, but a book like this is something that needs to be read. And now let me go back to Charleston. Now let me go back into the lower Georgia cities and things so that we can learn about what really took place on this soil. Absolutely.
And you can go, hopefully people will have the opportunity to. You can go to Africatown, which is where a large group of Clotilda survivors were enslaved and where they established their own free community. And there is a heritage house. There are places you can visit that were established by the Clotilda survivors. So the church that they established is still there. So you can get a bit of a sense of where they lived and what their life was like.
Yeah. I love how you stepped out and you called it exactly what it is. Kidnapping. That is a big word, and yet it does put focus on what really was taking place.
Yeah, because, horribly, most of the Clotilda survivors were very, very young people, in many cases children. So the youngest was just 2 years old, and she was kidnapped with her mother and three of her sisters, and her two brothers were left behind. So I think the only way to convey the horror of that separation it is to call it out for what it is and to make us reflect on just what the transatlantic slave trade meant. Because, of course, Britain was, I'm in the UK, and certainly throughout the 18th century, Britain trafficked about 3 million people, which was a large percentage of all people who were trafficked across the Atlantic. I mean, trafficked is technically not the right word because it was a legal trade at that time, but it helps to put it in moral context, I think.
What's interesting, Doctor, is the fact that you talk about Britain. And, I guess maybe we're just American selfish because it seems like when we talk about slavery, it's America, it's America. We forget that it was other parts of the world.
Yeah, and I think Britain's guilty of that in the other way. So we don't talk about slavery enough because we think it was over there. It was in the Americas.
Yeah.
But, of course, it was British people or people of British descent who were doing this in many, many cases. And, of course, the captain of the Clotilda, he was a Canadian man, but because he was born in Canada, he proudly regarded himself as a British man because, of course, this was the British Empire. So technically, the last U.S. slave ship captain was a Brit. So I think we should reflect on that over here as well. And and reflect, of course, on how so much of the wealth of the transatlantic slave trade was funneled into all these beautiful British stately homes, and so how it's shaped our history to the past. Well, certainly 400 years, but more than that, really.
How do we keep it in the everyday conversation? Because, like I said, we have become this generation that likes to shove things to the side and keep marching forward. But this has got to be a part of the everyday conversation.
Yeah, we need to reflect on what humanity is capable of, so we hopefully don't. Because although we're obviously, so human trafficking is still ongoing,
yes, certainly,
but also we need to reflect on what we are capable of doing to each other as human beings because in many cases of greed, and recognize, we need to learn those moral lessons. But also I think it's so important, and I was spending time with descendants of Clotilda survivors just this past week, and how it's important to them to be able to connect with their history and their heritage and understand that and understand who their ancestors were. And so I think it's such an important story for them to be able to hold on to, and also people wanting to trace their history. People whose history has been erased by the transatlantic slave trade. I think these Clotilda survivors speak for so many people, not just their own story, but I think because there are so few narratives or so few testimonies by Middle Passage survivors that these Clotilda survivors speak to them all, especially the women, because there are almost no female accounts of the Middle Passage.
Yeah, and you talk about those children too, don't you? I mean, the sale of 103 surviving children. I mean, that's the thing about it, is that hits me in the heart really hard.
Yeah, because they're so young, but so many of them are still alive in the 20th century.
Yeah.
So Matilda McCrea, who was just 2 years old when she was kidnapped, she survived until January 1940. Her grandson is still alive. He was just taking me around Selma, just this past week, driving me around Selma and taking me on a tour of key sites, including the house where she died. And it really brings it home to you just how close that history is, how it's people who are alive today who are just 2 or 3 generations removed from the transatlantic slave trade.
Wow. I just can't imagine what you went through as, first of all, digging in and getting the information, putting it on the pages, and now you're relinquishing your book to us. I mean, you're such, it's almost like you've been called to do this so that the future can't forget it.
Yeah, I think if I hadn't, knowing, when I first identified a Clotilda survivor, kind of by accident really, because I just stumbled upon her name. I think if I hadn't, I feel like I would have been complicit in a sense in that elision, because this was a hidden history, and for a long time the Clotilda voyage was dismissed as a hoax.
Yep.
So descendants were railing for decades against that and trying to secure, recognition. Lots of, I guess this isn't just about me. Lots of descendants and the historians or the writers, have attempted to tell this story, and I've certainly done it in a more comprehensive way. But I think it's been a battle for previous writers and descendants to get that recognition.
Wow.
And get that history in the public domain. Right?
Yeah. You've got to come back to this show anytime in the future. I love your story, and I want to help you get this word out so far, and let it wrap around the world so people can get it in their conversations.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. It really has.
Thank you. Will you be brilliant today, okay, Doctor?
Thank you. Take care. Have a great day.